Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband News. So there's been a flurry of activity from the Trump administration, executive orders and memos, and a lot of anxiety over what some of those things meant as far as BEAD, maybe some overreactions. So I'll be right back to discuss that and talk a little bit about what we might expect in the future. Be right back. And thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Quorum with Broadband News. So I wanted to take a look at some of what's happened in the last few days. So as we all know, there was some executive orders a bunch of executive orders that Donald Trump signed over the first few days of his administration, and then even after that. So and one that got everybody's attention was this Unleashing American Energy one, because as you looked at it, I'm going to scroll way through this. We get to a point down here somewhere where you see it says terminating the Green New Deal. All agencies shall immediately pause the disbursement of funds appropriated through the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, which is one of the biggest lying names there ever was, because that act had nothing to do with inflation. It was all about an environmental bill. So really, the Green New Deal is, I think, even what the Biden administration was calling it after the fact. But the Inflation Reduction Act, and then it says, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the IIJA, and that is the act that the BEAD program was under. So a lot of people were like, "Oh, wow, this means that they're terminating BEAD or they're doing something with BEAD." So there's a lot of concerns about that. But as you read through this, first of all, again, this is called the Unleashing American Energy executive order. So there's nothing about really energy so much in the BEAD program, maybe trying to save energy in places and those kinds of rules in there. But seriously, it's a broadband bill. So here you see, within 90 days of the date of this order, all agency heads should submit a report to the director of the NEC and the director of OMB. That, and we're talking about the Energy Commission there, right? So that details the findings of this review, including recommendations to enhance their alignment with the policy set forth in Section 2. No funds identified in this subsection shall be dispersed or given by a given agency until the director of OMB, an assistant to the president for economic policy, have determined that such disbursements are consistent with any review recommendations they've chosen. So if you looked at Section 2, again, it was all about energy and the Green New Deal, so probably passed it. This is Section 3. Now here we go, Section 2. Section 2, so it talks about encourage energy exploration, leading producer of non-fuel minerals, protect the United States' economic and national security, military preparedness, again, abundant supply of reliable energy. Energy there, electrical vehicle mandate, eliminate that. Freedom to choose a variety of goods and appliances, light bulbs, dishwashers that don't take 4 hours to wash your dishes, those kinds of things. Ensure that global effects rule, regulation, or action shall, whenever evaluated, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it doesn't specifically mention energy there, but you're getting the gist, that this was really about energy right there. And then I think the day after, because of all of the anxiety over what was covered here, they issued a memorandum that said, hey, this pause only applies to funds supporting programs, projects, or activities that may be implicated by the policy established in Section 2 of the order. So again, we just read through that. It's really, what they're saying is, this is related to energy and those kinds of things, the things that were mentioned there. So all of the programs probably didn't need to be so worried about this. Now then, I think it was not yesterday, maybe it was the night before, we had this order come out from the president, the Office of the President, that was putting everything on hold, temporary pause of agency grant, loan, and other financial assistance programs. So it sounds very broad. It was very broad. And basically, if you read through this, what they're saying is they want to make sure that, and I appreciate this as a taxpayer, that they want to make sure that any money that is going out the door has been looked at first, now that they are in charge, and make sure they don't want to wasting money. A lot of people were concerned, again, overreacting or trying to spin it to make it look bad. There was a lot of people saying, oh, now people won't be able to get their SNAP benefits and this and that. And it specifically says in here, I think even in this memo, it says that it's not those things. But then again, a clarifying memo came out, and it said, any program not implicated by the president's executive orders is not subject to pause. And as you read through those executive orders, there's also not anything in there necessarily about broadband. So again, the executive order, the only thing that came close was that Unleashing American Energy, which mentioned the IIJA, but again, then it refers back to that section that's really all about energy policies and not about broadband. But they clarified that it's not about, that direct payments aren't affected. This is what it's supposed to do. So freezing all federal financial assistance does not apply across the board. That's federal financial assistance. It doesn't freeze SNAP or student loans. A couple other small things in here. So anyway, they came out with that, and then then there was a judge that said, hey, you can't do that, and rather than unpause the pause, they rescinded the pause, but they said we're just going to continue on looking at all of these things. We're just not going to pause stuff. So they're just putting people on notice that we're still looking at this, but they didn't, since rather than wait on the courts and all of this, they're going to go ahead and continue on what they're doing. I don't think they're necessarily going to fight it. You see here, there was a revision of the OMB memorandum on January 29th. It's reported in the New York Times and the Washington Post. There's not a link to it here, but this is again a memo from NAFSA. So this is what I could find. Talks about summary of analysis. There's government agent responses, education association statements, legal challenges. So in any event, this is basically saying, yeah, this memo's been rescinded. This pause has been rescinded. So now looks again like everything is going forward. I don't think there's any question now for most folks that BEAD is not going to be an issue. But, I was never really too concerned because if you think about a couple of things, number one, broadband was never really a campaign promise of Donald Trump. The only time he really mentioned it was when he and I think a few people were questioning why we were spending so much money, $42.45 billion, when we could connect everybody up in the country with satellite service easily for that and pay for it for however many years. And that's the kind of statement that Donald Trump might make, or maybe some other people that don't understand broadband and the technologies and how the speeds and how fiber can extend far out into the future without having to change any of the underlying infrastructure, the fiber plant. You just have to upgrade some laser technology, line cards, those kinds of things, the optics in the equipment. But sometimes you can keep the same equipment, you keep the same OLT and maybe go up to 25 gig or even 50 gig and have the same piece of access equipment there, and you just have to change out some optics and cards. So anyway, fiber's the future. It's good that we're focusing on that, and we're not. I don't think anybody's going to come in and say, okay, we're just going to do all satellite. Or I don't think there was a thing there's a broadcast I did last week about a couple of guys from a think tank that said, hey, we should have the extremely high cost threshold set at $1,200 so that we can consider other technologies if the cost is going to be over $1,200 per passing or per home or location, and which is ridiculous. That's way too low. You should be able to do fiber in most states, be able to get vast amounts of fiber in for much higher than that. So you need to understand the technology, and I don't think we'd be seeing a lot of that going on. So again, there was no broadband campaign promise by Donald Trump. However, there were campaign promises about the Green New Deal. And that was very clear. So the executive order was covering that. That's a promise that he made, so he's trying to fulfill his promises. He didn't make a promise necessarily about broadband, or they're again questioning the amount. And there are always questions from the Republican side about regulations in there that were slowing things down, whether that be the environmental, which is interesting. It could be that the environmental portions of the bill, if they ever get around to that, it's going to be hard to get around to it because the train's starting to move down the track pretty quickly, right? We've got 3 states that have had their final proposals approved. I think Louisiana said they're going to be breaking ground here very soon. I forget what they said. It might be within a couple of months that they're going to be breaking ground. The people that their subgrantees will be breaking ground. So it's moving pretty quickly. You've got a lot of states that have got their application processes open now. The state of Georgia, where I am, that application process is open and it actually closes. I think tomorrow is when the final day to get applications in on the first round. Here in Georgia, the first round is fiber only. So if you're going to bid in that round, it has to be fiber, and it has to be at a county-wide level. Their project areas are by the county, which is a big chunk of area to be covering. So that's how they're going this first round, and then depending on what happens the first round, there might be a second round, et cetera. So anyway, the states are definitely moving. So it would be, I think there are bigger things that they're trying to cover now with the Green New Deal and with other kinds of initiatives and funding where they might not ever get to BEAD and even the environmental stuff in there, because again, it's kind of far down the road now. The states have already looked at that. All the proposals are in the volume 1 and 2 proposals. So that's all been looked at, and the sub-grantees have probably considered, those that are considering doing BEAD have probably considered what they've got to do there. So I don't know. But if they do come back with BEAD on anything, I think the things that would be affected or impacted would be some of those regulations that are going to cause costs to go up. And when you have the cost go up, then you have fewer dollars to deploy broadband. So if you're spending money on environmental stuff related to that, or if you're saying you have to have certain workforce requirements, and that's going to cause the cost of providing broadband in the area to go up, then that means you've got fewer miles of broadband that you can actually deploy because your costs are going somewhere else. So they could be possibly looking at some of those things. As far as satellite and fiber, I think the NTIA has done a really good job of kind of threading that where they're kind of staying in the right lane, where they've got an extremely high cost threshold. In other words, they're saying the states, and they're leaving it up to the states, you states that know the lay of the land can determine what is the extremely high cost threshold where you want to consider alternative technologies like fixed wireless, licensed fixed wireless, or satellite, or a mixture of licensed and unlicensed on the fixed wireless. So you guys decide on that. And they are allowing them to use satellite. They've given some guidance there. So I think they've struck the right balance there on that. So I don't see changes to that. I don't see, even with Elon Musk being Donald Trump's Doge guy, I don't believe there will be changes there. Again, I think it would be on some of the regulations, because again, that's the other thing that the Trump administration is interested in doing. And that's what Donald Trump campaigned on, is reducing regulations to reduce the burdens on businesses. And again, hopefully to bring down the costs of things as you do that, because it's costing companies less to provide the service if they don't have to worry about, environmental stuff when they're putting in broadband. Now, obviously they want to take care of the environment, but they don't. There's a lot of times a lot of unnecessary regulations that they're having to run through, and it just drives the cost of services up, whether it's be products you buy in the supermarket or broadband, those kinds of things. So I think we're okay. We are obviously okay now with this being rescinded, but the question is what's next? Are they looking at BEAD now, and what are they going to do? Is there any changes they're going to make? Again, I don't think they're going to make any big changes. I think they realize, again, it's not only did Donald Trump not campaign on broadband, it's not really a partisan issue other than these little fringe things that I'm talking about, like regulations and the environmental stuff. So everybody wants it. Even the Republicans that voted against the IIJA and maybe would have preferred things be different in BEAD, they all want broadband. They all want this money for their states. They all want they all want to be able to stand up and say, hey, we improved broadband, even if they didn't vote for it, right? So it's kind of a bipartisan issue there. So it's not like, again, the environmental stuff where you've got one side on one, or one group on one side and one group on the other, where they're very split on that. In this case, it's bipartisan. Everybody wants it. So, and everybody realizes how long it's taken. And Donald Trump can't, he can blame the Biden administration for how long it's taken up to now, but everything from now forward, any delays would be on him, right? So I don't think they're going to do anything that's going to delay it through any significant amount of time, because they don't want that on them, and they want to be able to get this taken care of, and then they can take credit for getting it done maybe faster than it would have been if they do that. I don't know, just to move quickly on it. So we'll have to see. The other interesting thing is, I don't think there's anybody now in charge of the NTIA. I don't know who would be under Raimondo and Davidson. I don't know where it went from there, but hopefully there's somebody there, third in charge, that would be interfacing with OMB and others and the Trump administration on any questions that they have to get things cleared up and to be able to get things moving so that there's no delays based on the transition to the new administration. So that's the question I have is who's running the show on some of these agencies where they don't have a Trump person in there yet, and how does that impact things? But hopefully, again, there's a good group of folks there that have been working on this, that know it well, that will continue this, like I say, this train moving down the track and keep things going. So we'll have to see what happens in the next few weeks, if there's any announcements from NTIA and any additional proposals that they, Volume 2 proposals that they approve, and any challenge processes that are finished up, and we'll see how the news takes us from there. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate that. If you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button, ring the bell to be notified when I'm live, and I will see you next time for Broadband News. Take care. Bye-bye.